This bike cannot do a burnout. Hello everybody, coming at you with all my might. It is Smite. How you guys doing today? Oh man, this feels so good. It feels so good to be out and actually riding a motorcycle again. And you're like, well, you were riding your dirt bike. Yes I was. I have been riding my dirt bike basically every Sunday, riding and or working on my dirt bike. But it feels nice to actually just get out on a road bike too. I bought this bike and I put maybe 500 miles on it. If actually no, 19 plus 6, so actually it's 2600 minus 19,000, so that 1900. I am not good with numbers. Had 1900 miles on it and I have 2600 on it now, so I did 700 miles last year on this bike, and that's it. Whereas I did 2,000 miles on my Zero before trading it in. Last year I was overworked, so I really didn't get a lot of chance to actually get out and ride like as much as I would have liked to. Because this really is an amazing bike. But this year I plan on doing a whole lot more riding. Before I was gonna put this bike away, I had ran it out of fuel, so I'm like, crap, I need to go get some gas. But then it was like starting to be winter, so what I ended up doing is one nice day, it was nice as in there was no rain or anything like that, it was still rather cold, but the bike barely turned over. I'm like, well, let it idle there and we'll just drive it to the gas station and then fill it up. So I drove to the gas station, shut it off, fill it up, and I go to start it and it goes roll, and click. I'm like, no way. Like, I just told my wife that, oh, I'll just be back. So I called her. She had to throw the baby in the car and get out there. Luckily I was only like 2 blocks away, but so I hooked the battery jumper up to it and nothing. It doesn't do anything. I'm like, really? I'm like, crap. Hopefully I didn't actually like fry some sort of electronics, because it wasn't even clicking at this point. I looked at the battery box, the green light was on. I'm like, I don't know. And then I realized it just tells you that the box is connected to the battery. Like, there's an on switch, and I'm like, oh yeah, I feel so dumb now. So I switched that to on, got it fired up, and I figured I would do a couple miles to try to, get a charge on the battery. Ended up doing 11 miles, and when I pulled in the house, I shut it off, went to start it again, click, nothing. So I'm like, great, I need a new battery. I figured, oh, maybe I could just get a battery tender. So I got a battery tender / charger, one that can actually do a slow charge. Hooked that up and it charged for a while, then the light went green and saying it's tended now. So I went to fire the bike up and nothing. I'm like, it just did a couple clicks. I'm like, so what's up? Turns out that when I would try to actually use the battery, it would drop down to like 5 volts. So it was just not nearly enough to turn over the bike. So I ordered a new battery. I wish I would have said that. I wish I would have ordered a new battery, but I actually missed out on one of the better days of riding before the last snowstorm. There was like 2 or 3 days of like amazing weather. But I didn't have a battery in my bike. And yesterday was a beautiful day all day, and then it rained as I got home. And there's still a lot of salt and dirt on the roads. So I don't really want to play with a wet road per se. You're not going to get as much dirt on your bike on a dry, dirty road. So figured, hey, let's do it out. So I ended up ordering a battery from Battery Sharks. I'm not sure if you saw my reel, but I've literally had nothing but bad luck with the 2 or 3 year old BMW batteries. Mostly it's been a year, because there's a receipt for the battery of this bike. So I don't know, it just didn't work out for me. So I slap a $20 Battery Sharks battery in there and crank her up, and away we go. And I ran one of those in my GS for 3 years with no issues. So like, it was still the same battery when I sold it. So who knows? I don't know if he's still running that battery or not, but now I actually have the battery tender hooked up when I'm not riding it, which I'm probably going to be riding it more frequently now, so not a huge issue. But with every new bike I get, I generally do get to read the owner's manual. Now I understand you're supposed to read them before you actually ride the bike. Good idea. So I found some very interesting topics in the owner's manual, explaining the different modes, like telling you what they do and what they don't provide, because this has advanced stability control, advanced dynamic traction control, and like 4 other random doohickeys that aid in the rider. Like, this has wheelie control. I did not know that, because the moment I got on the bike, I switched it to Dynamic Pro and left it. And Dynamic Pro is basically, you are in control of the bike. The bike can flip over. It will do a wheelie. ABS is less intrusive, and so you can spin the tire. Like, not extremes, like it's still lean angle sensitive, like, but it will allow you to spin the tire more. You can actually get the rear tire off the ground. And I was reading the manual, I'm like, oh, I did not know this. And it says, yes, warning, you can flip the bike over. I'm like, oh, I kind of figured, because of the rate that this thing would come up, if you were really getting on it, I knew that it was probably way too much to actually have any sort of anti-wheelie measures. So it turns out, in dynamic, you can in fact do small wheelies. You'll allow some drifts out of turn. Well, okay, so I shouldn't say that. I did not know it had wheelie control on it, because I've never, like, there was never anything interrupting. But apparently, if you try to do a wheelie in road mode, it keeps it on the ground. There's like no wheelie in road mode. Dynamic, yeah, you can do some wheelies, but it's controlled. And then Dynamic Pro is wheelie away, senor wheelier. And yeah, that was weird. That was wheelie bad. But another interesting fact, all these factoids that you learn from reading your owner's manual, which I highly recommend if you have a sophisticated bike like the BMW S1000xr. And one thing I found out is this bike cannot do a burnout. And you're like, what? Why can it not do a burnout? Actually, yes, but actually no. It can do a burnout. You will break stuff. So basically, I'm sure you've heard of linked braking. This bike has linked braking, and you can't turn it off. So there's no way to turn it off. You got linked braking. So it's less intrusive, less of a link the further in the modes you go. So like rain is more linked, road less linked, and it just keeps tapering down. But there's still linked braking. So when you don't notice it, like when the bike is off, but when the bike is moving, the ABS system pushes pressure based on how much pressure you give the front brake. And I did not know that, you know. And the thing is I probably didn't know that because I slapped it in Dynamic Pro, and that's where we sat. But obviously you don't need to be running it in this total full-on sport mode. It makes a lot of different calculations based on what mode you're running in. So if you have, you know, dynamic ESA, which is your sporty electronic suspension adjustment, you're going to get a more sporty ride and everything. It's pretty crazy how many calculations and what the bike is willing to do. I probably should actually run in a higher gear. The throttle on this bike is a little snatchy, around below $3 grand, like it's on and off. If you're in a, I guess it's in a lower gear. I guess we have plenty enough speed. So I really don't run it that low. And it's hard because my GS was happy around 5 grand. And we all know I put 30,000 miles on the GS, so it's hard to translate, because this thing, to me, when I'm looking forward, it feels like GS, besides the motor is a heck of a lot smoother than a GS motor. But there's also like a $5,000 to $10,000 price difference, so that might play a factor too. Perhaps. But the mirrors and everything like that, this like feels like my GS, so you will not see any burnout videos on this bike, because I don't want to. It's like you'll do damage to your clutch and or primary drive, because and your brakes. Well, you'll smoke your brakes off, and that's not something you want to do, especially on a nice touring bike like so. Lots of gravel on the road. But yeah, so we're just gonna do a little cruise. It's just nice to log some miles in. So plan on doing some big rides this year. My buddy wanted to do a iron, but I'm not sure if we're gonna get to do one of those or not. But well, I hope you enjoyed this little adventure and this little information gathering that I've provided for you. This mighty bike it's incapable of burning out safely. So don't forget to grab some tires from RevZilla. I really enjoy it when you grab some tires from RevZilla. Link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day, and God bless. Enjoy your ride 2022. Woo!